Okay, so first I'm going to talk about the hydrology factor. If you look on your wetland delineation form on the back side of it, at the bottom, there's a section for hydrology. And there are a bunch of different factors here that you should be paying attention to know whether the area is a wetland or not. And for Alaska, there are fewer indicators on here than there are in other areas, as I mentioned earlier. One of the funny things looking at this today and in the past compared to reviewing some of the California ones very recently is for California, there's an indicator there looking for dead, dried freshwater shrimp. So if you find those, you get check the box, and that would be one of the indicators for hydrology. Here in Alaska, we don't have freshwater shrimp in our wetlands, so that's not a specific indicator. But there are a lot of other indicators here. Some of them are pretty obvious, some of them are not so obvious, and might take a little bit of extra searching to find these things. But basically what you can be searching for is how water flows. If you take a look around us, we have a lake, and then we have this area here with low vegetation and shrubs, and it looks like grasses, and then surrounded by trees. There's no obvious standing water right here, but if Dorn points the camera down into the area, you can see that we have some standing water here. So this is a factor where water is just sitting and sopping and not saturating down into the ground. And so if you look at your hydrology indicator list on the back side here, this would be either a high water table, the water isn't saturating all the way down, or it'd be also the saturation, A3 would also be an acceptable mark. So if I were filling out this form, I'd mark off the saturation or the high water table, preferably the saturation because the water is definitely not draining. High water table, if there's no standing water and you dig your soil pit and you pull up a plug of soil, just let it sit there for a few minutes and water starts seeping in, then that would be indicative of a high water table. Some of these other things, such as algal mat or crust, you might have to look harder for those indicators. And algal crust would be indicative that there's not water here 365 days out of the year, but it'd be more seasonally flooded or inundated. And algal film will be sitting on the surface of the water percolate down and dry out, but that algal layer will follow that water down and be a nice crusty layer on the surface of the soil. Some of the other things that you might be looking for are dry seasonal water table, and then also some watermarks on trees. Those are pretty obvious. If you look at the base of trees, there might be like a bathtub ring at the base of a tree. That'd be indicative that the area gets a lot of water and it's inundated, saturated with water for a long time. One thing that's pretty obvious on here is a hydrogen sulfide odor. This is super indicative of a wetland. We don't smell that here, or at least I don't smell that. Dorn's shaking his head, he doesn't smell that. Some other wetlands earlier today I was smelling that, and I was just like, oh gosh, who's cooking eggs out here? It's ridiculous. So that hydrogen sulfide smell, if we dig into the soil, we might get that little bit of that smell. That's really indicative of a wetland, and what that is that there is showing that there's anaerobic processes going on. So when we have the microbes in the soil and on the surface of the soil, they're breaking down all of the organic matter. They're using up all of the oxygen, and then the decomposition of plants occurs and regenerates the cycles of extra nitrogen, oxygen, carbon, etc. It goes back into the earth. When water comes in and seeps in, inundates, and sits here for a while, all the microbes will use up all of that oxygen, and then the environment goes into anaerobic state, and then that will provide that sulfur smell, which smells like rotten eggs.